It is saddening to talk about a special person like Vin Scully, one of the greatest voices in professional sports, a guy that stood out with the Brooklyn Dodgers and then the LA Dodgers, but just who he was as a man, a person that every analyst, every sports analyst wanted to be. For over 68 years as a broadcaster for the Dodgers, Vin Scully gave you his all. A person, not just a mind for baseball, a person that had a tremendous amount of passion in what he said, how he said it, and the way he brought it to baseball. Vin Scully had a great life. 94 years of life and a grandfather and kids and a tremendous life. And to live a life being around baseball as much as he was, it's just a sensational story. And he'll always be remembered, not just with his voice, but who he was as a person on and off the field.
There's not many people that could touch as many generations with his influence and his words than Vin Scully, both in the baseball community and, like you were saying, just across the industry as a whole. Brooklyn, the community there, baseball growing up huge in the 1940s, 1950s. A lot of our grandfathers and past generations grew up on hearing Vin Scully when he first started with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And again, it really grew the game over there of baseball. Then LA gets this new team, the LA Dodgers in 1958. Vin Scully's the voice of them since they start over there, since they have that upstart of California, West Coast baseball. And his broadcasting style was something that was very unique too at the time. Radio broadcasting was just coming in. TV broadcasting was very new at that time. And Vin Scully was one of those guys that wanted to just do it in his very own unique way. And the Dodgers let him do it. And that's a great thing for somebody like Vin Scully to really bring to the sport. And so many broadcasters that you hear on TV today, on radio today, learn from somebody like Vin Scully, an absolute icon, absolute legend in the sport of baseball and the sports broadcasting industry, and an even better man off the field as well. Powerful guy to a lot of people.
One of the greatest voices in sports generation. He'll always be remembered as the voice of baseball. Vin Scully, 94 years, may he rest in peace. Shout out to his family, all his grandchildren, his kids, his wife. Everybody's saddened by his loss, but you always want to remember the greatness of who he was as a person and as a voice for professional baseball. Now I want to get into the New York Yankees. And a lot of people thought that the Yankees were going to sit still. They weren't going to make the moves. Everybody thought it was going to be the Mets, not the Yankees. But before the trade deadline, after the All-Star game, the Yankees made a move for Andrew Benintendi. I expected the Yankees to add some outfielding help. They added one of the better outfielders that were available, Andrew Benintendi from Kansas City, an All-Star. This is his first year as an All-Star. Had a sensational year going into the All-Star break, batting .321. He won a Gold Glove for the first time last year for the Kansas City Royals. So I think it was a good move for the Yankees. But a lot of people were worried because they lost out on the Luis Castillo sweepstakes. He goes to Seattle. Seattle gave up their farm. And the Yankees weren't willing to give up Dominguez or Volpe or Pariza. The Yankees didn't want to give up their top prospects. But as the trade deadline came closer, the Yankees were really looking at Frankie Montas, and they pulled the trigger. Adding him and Trevino was a fantastic move for the New York Yankees. They give themselves another power pitcher. And then, which was a shocker, they trade Jordan Montgomery to the St. Louis Cardinals and add Bader, a very good outfielder, a guy that can hit for average, also steal bases, and do all the things that the Yankees are going to need, because there was stories coming out that the Yankees were going to move Hicks, but that trade fell through. So the Yankees are really clustered out in the outfield when Giancarlo Stanton comes back. The Yankees add another relief pitcher in Scott Efros, who's having a great season, a young pitcher. This was his rookie season as a 27-year-old, a guy that they have control of for next year, even when King comes back. So the Yankees, I would say the Yankees had the second best trade deadline moves out of all the teams in the major leagues.
They had a theme when it came to the pitching, and that was the strikeouts. Scott Efros, one of the better strikeout rates among relief pitchers with over 10 strikeouts per game so far. And Frankie Montas, outside of the 2018 season where he averaged 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, every other year he's averaged 9.5 or better. This year right now at 9.4 strikeouts per 9 innings. And people have made the lazy comparison, oh, Frankie Montas trade was bad because they traded for Sonny Gray and that didn't work. They brought in Andrew Bailey, another ex-Athletics pitcher. That didn't work. And they're comparing that kind of thing. They need strikeouts in Yankee Stadium and all those other American League East bandboxes. And Montez definitely has that. One of the highest top 20 velocity guys since he's become a full-time starter, and a guy that still has very good stuff. Now, he's had some injury issues in his career, came off a Tommy John surgery at the end of that 2018 season, but still a guy that has been pretty durable besides that, and a guy that's still pretty young, still a lot of upside. And the Yankees, with the way their rotation is built right now, he'll probably slot into the number 2, and I think he'll make a big difference for this team for sure with his stuff.
The way the Yankees position themselves, I think they've made a tremendous amount of moves, and Brian Cashman, slam dunk. You say whatever you want about what Brian Cashman did going into the season. Nobody's arguing what they did at the trade deadline. Now, I think the Padres made the biggest splash, adding Juan Soto, adding Bell, 2 power hitters to that lineup from the Nationals. They gave away a ton of prospects. The Padres, who had the number 1 farm system in baseball, probably moved down to 9 or 10 after giving 3 of their top 10 prospects. But I think the Padres wanted to make the move. They're ready to win now. They added Josh Hader, who's one of the best relief pitchers in baseball, if not the best relief pitcher in baseball. They gave up a couple of prospects to make that move, but they didn't give up a lot for Josh Hader for the talent that he is. So you got the best relief pitcher in all of baseball. You got one of the best hitters in baseball in Juan Soto, and then you add one of the better power bats, an all-star type of player this year who's batting over 300 and who has great power numbers in Bell. I think the Padres absolutely slam dunk the trade deadline, Speedy.
The Padres have watched the Dodgers for the last couple of years go after all these splashy names: Mookie Betts, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner. The list goes on and on. While they rebuilt, got some flashy guys on their own roster, signed Manny Machado, sure, but never as big of a splash as what you saw on Tuesday. They first go after Josh Hader the day before that. Josh Hader, who I think is the most valuable relief pitcher because he's not just a closer. He could pitch in so many different roles, so many different methods. He could stretch and go 2-3 innings. He's a lefty that could face anybody. He has great stuff. I know he had a bad stretch, and that's rigging his ERA right now where it doesn't look as good, but that's only been the last 2-3 weeks. He's a guy that can pitch in so many different roles, and the Padres can use him for postseason strategy to take that next step forward. Bob Melvin now being their manager, and he's a guy that's been experienced, not great in the playoffs, but experienced, where he could definitely get the best out of him. And then Juan Soto and Josh Bell, that's insane for that lineup. They're going to get Tatis back probably within the next month or so to add to that postseason lineup. And their lineup, they've had their struggles at points this year, but now with these guys, there's not going to be a lot of guys you could just pitch around to be able to work with. So I think they become either the number 1 or number 2 fearsome team in the National League along with the Dodgers. They surpassed the Braves, they surpassed the Mets, and everyone else that was there.
And then the third team that really stood out at the trade deadline were the Astros, adding Trey Mancini, first baseman who could play outfield, who gives them a little pop in that lineup. It gives them the first baseman that they really dreadfully needed. And then the catcher, Christian Vasquez from the Red Sox, who's had a sensational year. He's hitting for average, had a fantastic year. And then left-handed pitcher Will Smith, who's a very good pitcher from the Braves. So I think they were the other team that really stood out, the third best team that stood out to the trade deadline. So I would say Padres 1, Yankees 2, and Houston Astros 3. The Dodgers really didn't make any moves besides Joey Gallo. Nothing really that stood out. I think they wanted to stand pat where they are as a team. They're one of the better teams in the major leagues. And Milwaukee, I'm wondering what Milwaukee is doing. They traded away their best relief pitcher. I know they have a good bullpen. They're the number 1 team in their division. They're probably going to make the playoffs. Why would you give up your best relief pitcher in the middle of the season? It doesn't make any sense. And you didn't really get anything for him either. So it doesn't make any sense. I'm interested to see what Milwaukee is trying to do. I know they're trying to shed contracts, and I don't know if the Padres are going to be able to re-sign Hader, if they're going to give Juan Soto a contract, but it's crazy. They got the best relief pitcher in baseball, one of the top 3 hitters in baseball, and this year's one of the top power hitters in baseball in Josh Bell. So it's ridiculous where the Padres are, and definitely one of the favorites. A lot of people believe one of the favorites to win the whole thing. But the Mets, who a lot of people believed they were going to make the most moves, there was stories coming out that they offered a significant amount of pieces to the Nationals for Juan Soto, and I told everybody, and I'm going to say it again, and I don't care how mad Josh is or any Met fan is, there was no way Rizzo from the Nationals, the GM of the Nationals, was going to trade within the division. I said that over and over and over and again. And I don't care what the Mets offered. Beatty, Alvarez, they could have added Pete Alonso in the trade. They weren't making that trade. They were not going to want to see Juan Soto 17 times a year. I know Met fans were upset that they couldn't get Juan Soto. I know the Met fans were upset that they didn't made any big splashes. They made some moves, not moves that really stood out. I still believe the the Mets are one of the favorites of coming out of the National League because they still have a healthy Max Scherzer and hopefully a healthy Jacob deGrom, Speedy.
Well, that's the approach they're going to have to take at this point. They're going to have to be kind of old school when it comes to that because the Mets still lack some things. They got better with the power bats. Vogelbach has been a nice addition so far. Gotten on base in, I think, 9 of the 16 games he's played with the Mets so far. Tyler Naquin played well, but that's it. That's really all they did at the trade deadline. They last-second trade for reliever Michael Givens, who's been up and down throughout his career, kind of like Adam Ottavino. He's been pitching well this year so far, but still not anything that I would write home about. The biggest thing that makes me mad with the Mets, though, is the relief pitchers that they should have been targeting didn't even get traded. It's not like another team swooped in and stole him last second. Daniel Bard, who got extended by the Rockies, I don't know why, did not get traded. Andrew Chafin was another guy. Michael Fulmer got traded to the Twins, but besides that, a lot of the other relief pitchers that they were seeking outside of David Robertson did not actually get traded. So I feel like the Mets were kind of getting passive and maybe content with the fact that DeGrom was coming back. But in a modern baseball, when it comes to postseason strategy, you need more depth than that. And the Mets have only 2 left-handers on their entire roster of pitchers. David Peterson, who they're trying to move to their bullpen right now, and Joely Rodriguez hasn't pitched well for them this year. So that's another concern when it comes to playoff strategy, too. And good teams, good managers will be able to dissect that.
And the 4th team that made the most moves that really stood out were the Philadelphia Phillies. I have no idea why they made a move for Noah Syndergaard. They're not making the playoffs. They dropped Didi Gregorius after the trade deadline. Noah Syndergaard is a free agent after this year. Why did they bring Noah in? Are they expected to make the playoffs? I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. David Robertson, who a lot of people wanted. David Robertson wanted to go to a team that was going to make the playoffs. Why would the Philadelphia Phillies, who right now, they're trailing so much behind the Mets and the Braves, they're not going to be a wild card team. They're not making the playoffs. Why would they make these moves when you're probably going to lose Noah Syndergaard in the offseason? David Robertson is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. What was the reason behind this? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure a lot of the fans are scratching their head. As good as Noah Syndergaard is and David Robertson is, it made no sense.
A guy you're taking a flyer on, and you're really going to trust the pitching coach staff over there that really hasn't done well with outside of Wheeler, those other starters, to do that kind of thing with Syndergaard. Good luck. David Robertson's second stint with the Phillies can't be any worse than the first one, but still, yeah, definitely not something that you would trust. I would definitely still favor the Cardinals more in the wild card race and the Brewers if it came down to it in that National League. The Phillies are really the only other team on the outside looking in that have a shot, but even so, yeah, I don't trust them.
I have no understanding on why they made these moves at the trade deadline. Big mistake for the Philadelphia Phillies.